Good afternoon. I'm Libby Schaaf, Mayor of the beautiful city of Oakland. So grateful to be hosting our Attorney General of the great state of California, Rob Bonta, today in Oakland. Attorney General Bonta met with the 13 mayors of the biggest cities in California and promised that he would co-host a roundtable in each major city in California to discuss the problem and the solutions of hate crimes. And today, in one of America's most diverse and inclusive cities, and on International Gratitude Day, this incredible group of leaders came together to share pain, to share trauma, but most importantly, to share hope. Hope of a society that is not plagued by the harm of hate. We all know that Oaklanders are prideful of our diversity and inclusion, and yet hate is a disease here, right here in our beautiful Bay Area, with our progressive values, with our diversity, and yet we heard the painful stories of our children in our school who are bullied for their nationality, for their religious beliefs, by our elders who are afraid to walk through their own communities, by the hundreds of years of oppression and hate that continue to plague us to today. I would be remiss to not acknowledge also today another form of hate and of systemic racism, and that was 100 homicides. The solemn and grim milestone that Oakland reached yesterday of its 100th homicide. We, as leaders of this city, this region, this state, this family of humanity, are more dedicated than ever to reduce the harm, the trauma of hate and violence here and everywhere. With that, I just want to express my tremendous gratitude to all the leaders here who shared their solutions, their ideas. This is the beginning of a long conversation and actions to be taken to end hate crime and end harm and violence in this community. It is such a pleasure to introduce someone who is no stranger to Oakland, because our former Assembly member, now our Attorney General, Rob Bonta. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Schaaf, for your leadership, your partnership, your friendship, your kind words, and it's an honor and a thrill to be right here in Oakland today with so many incredible leaders. Right here in the East Bay, where I call home, my recently former Assembly district, Oakland, Alameda, and San Leandro, and today was a day that, although full of pain and tragedy, also was full of inspiration and hope. And we know that right now in this moment, here in Oakland, the Bay Area, California, nationwide, we are in a full-on state of emergency, a full state of crisis when it comes to hate. And we do pride ourselves here, rightfully so, in Oakland and in the Bay Area for being social justice oriented, forward-thinking, progressive, and we are those things. But nowhere are we immune from hate. And here, including right here in Oakland, we have suffered, and we have suffered mightily. We've seen the pain. Many of us have personally felt the pain. For many of us, hate crimes and hate violence is personal, whether it be actually being a victim of crime or fearing that we might be next as a victim of crime. Those innocent, everyday things that we like to do, a walk, a daily walk, going shopping, taking our kids to school, riding public transportation. We fear those, that in those moments we could be next. We fear for our safety. We fear for the safety of our family members. Recently, my mother reached out to me and she said, "Babe, I'm going to the city to meet with some community leaders to have a community meeting, and I want to take public transportation. Do you think I should?" And I think she knew that she shouldn't because she was asking me the question. But I told her what I believe, which was that you shouldn't, and that I should take you. And that shouldn't be a fear. That shouldn't be a worry. That shouldn't cause anxiety. But in this moment, it does. And so While we are in a full-on state of crisis and state of emergency, we're also rising up to address the problem. And I appreciate the conversation that we had just moments ago, hearing from leaders who are on the ground, leaders in communities who have earned and deserve trust of the communities that they lead, who rely on them for safety and for guidance and for their leadership. And they shared both the challenges and the successes. And, we talked about things like intersectionality, like earning more trust, the importance of gathering data so we can fully understand the scope and depth and dimensions of the problem, of having community members and community leaders be ambassadors and escorts for those who are most vulnerable, the disparate impacts on elders and women. And it was a very productive conversation, and this is exactly what we need to be doing. Our diversity is our strength. Our different lived experiences and perspectives make us stronger, and when we can share ideas, when we can come together in dialogue, in conversation, listen, learn, and move forward with best practices, that's how we advance our community. That's how we make progress, and that's what we need in this moment. So I'm thankful for the collaboration. I'm always reminded of that wonderful statement from Martin Luther King Jr. about our inescapable network of mutuality, our single garment of destiny that we share. To me, that means that we're all in this together. We're going to rise together, or not at all. We need each other. And so in this moment, this is Oakland, coming together, being there for each other, having each other's back, saying that while it's difficult and it's a struggle, we're going to get through it, and we're going to get through it together. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here in Oakland. I am in the middle of 13 conversations with leaders throughout the state who are all struggling with the same problem of the state of emergency and state of crisis when it comes to hate. And we started in San Francisco. I was proud to be with Mayor Breed just days ago, and now here, thankful to Mayor Libby Schaaf for hosting us and all the incredible leaders that are here. And I want it to be absolutely clear that as the Attorney General, as the leader of the California Department of Justice, with all of the full force and effect of my office, of my authority, everything that's granted to me in terms of the power under the Constitution, there is no room for hate. Not here, not anywhere, not now, not ever. And we're going to be standing strong together against the forces of hate as we move forward. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to be with all these great leaders, to talk about our paths forward, to work in collaboration, to heal and support our communities as we address this epidemic of hate. And it's now my honor to introduce the current Assembly Member for the 18th Assembly District, Assemblymember Mia Bonta.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have one of the first weeks being an Assembly member, being able to assemble with the brightest minds and the brightest hopes of our community here in the 18th Assembly District. We came together to talk about hate and recognized continually that what we really need to be talking about is unity. And not only do we need to focus on the actions that we need to take in this moment of unity to counter the hate that we have so devastatingly felt over the course of this pandemic, over the course of our lifetimes, over the course of generations, but we also came together to recognize that the path forward is that we all come together to do some very simple things. One is to know and understand the nature of the problem that we seek to change. We need to make sure that we're focused on gathering data, gathering the stories, and making sure that those stories can be heard by people who are trusted listeners. And then we need to make sure that not only are we listening and gathering the data that will guide us to the solutions that we need, but we need to make sure that we're recognizing the intersectionality between us. We are not just one thing. We are not just one identity. We are so much of who we are in the way that we operate and the way that we come together. And to not recognize the ways in which we come together through recognizing our intersectionality does us a disservice. So I'm thankful for that lesson that we were able to hear from our great leaders today. And finally, what I heard and what I intend to take away from this conversation is to recognize that while we are combating hate, we cannot do that with a mindset of scarcity. We need to make sure that our trusted messengers, our trusted providers, those who are closest to being able to combat hate through unity, have the resources and the opportunities that they need in order to be able to lift us all up. And so I'm thankful to be able to hear from our leaders in this moment, thankful to be able to represent the 18th District in the Assembly and to hear the voices that I know we will hear more of. This is one of many conversations that we all have had. It won't be the last for sure, but I'm hoping, so hoping that we're able to ensure that we can move towards action and through our service together. So thank you. And I get the pleasure to introduce Jehan Hakim in this moment. Thank you. Dr. Tu Quoc.
Well, thank you to our elected leaders for bringing us here and taking leadership on this very important issue. My name is Dr. Tu Quoc. I am the incoming president of Asian Health Services. We are a community health center serving 50,000 patients in 14 different languages, and we've been in existence for 47 years. I would say that Oakland has in so many ways been ground zero for both a dual pandemic of both COVID and as well as racism, but particularly for us, the anti-Asian racism that was going on. And yet we also endeavor to be ground zero for the solutions to a lot of this racism. During the pandemic, we were setting up culturally and linguistically competent COVID testing sites, vaccinations, mental health, all in rapid response to our community's needs. But what we saw on the ground was really this dual pandemic of both the virus as well as a lot of hate that was going on and that was targeting a lot of our Asian American community. In the streets of Oakland Chinatown and other areas like Little Saigon, you just in the beginning saw empty streets. It had become a ghost town. And it wasn't just a fear of catching the virus, it was really this fear of being attacked just simply for being who they are. And so, despite seeing what was on the ground, when we heard about what was happening when it came to COVID disparities, Asian Americans were just missing from that narrative. And we couldn't understand why. Like, we were feeling the impacts, but yet not being lifted up. And it took Asian Health Services, it took research partners, it took community partners to go out and collect our own data to really show, hey, we're not doing well. We're actually really hurting. We had the lowest COVID testing rates, which really showed why we had low COVID cases, that we were actually dying a lot from COVID, but it wasn't being lifted up. And then the Stop API Hate website was showing that we were being attacked, but that data wasn't coming through on a lot of the existing data collection methods. And overall, I would say that as a community health center and as an advocacy hub, we see the rise in attacks against Asians as not just an issue around safety, but also a health issue for our community, that racism and violence are public health issues, but we also recognize that if we're tackling community safety, that we also have to tackle on the long-term and complex issue of racial unity that was being brought up. I think what's sobering as an epidemiologist in the healthcare field is, as we look at COVID and this infectious disease, our health and well-being is only as good as that of our neighbors. And similarly, when it comes to community safety, when it comes to collective safety, we really need to work together. That for us, this is more than just about our Asian American community. It is about our shared humanity in this work. Thank you.
And next we have Amir Sandiata Rashid.
Thank you guys for coming out, and thank everybody who invited me. It was a very, very informative roundtable discussion, and one of the things that I was informed by when the mayor said that there was 100 homicides in Oakland this year so far, it was like the intersectionality between a society that teaches other people to hate you, at the same time teaches you to internalize that hate and hate yourself. And so these are the things that, because of the society that we live in, when we think of a white supremacist or a white nationalist, we think it's like somebody in the Proud Boys or something. But when the institutions only highlight whiteness. It makes everything that's not white seem insignificant and unimportant. And so when you see people attack people because they're not white, it's not that they're necessarily, because they'll attack an Asian today, a black person the next day, somebody from the LGBT community the next day. And the reason they do that is because they see those people as not belonging here. When in reality, when this nation started, it started with all of these people. It started with Muslims and Africans and Europeans and Asians and Native Americans. But when we go to school, I went to Oakland Unified School District my whole life, that's not highlighted. So what you internalize is you and your people don't matter. And so we got a lot of work to do, and that work is in educating each other about the importance of every single human being in this country. Everybody has added to this nation, and once everybody starts to understand that, we'll see a decrease in hate. Akulu Koli Hadha was stuck for Alali Walakum. Thank you very much.
Thank you. With that, we can take any questions you might have, and if there's someone you'd like to hear from and you want to specify, please do.